a stunning turn of events, Syria is plunged into uncertainty as the Assad regime collapses in just days. With Bashar al-Assad reportedly fleeing the country, Russian forces evacuate key bases and the armed factions secure new territory. Meanwhile, regional powers and global stakeholders brace for the next chapter in Syria's turbulent history. Syrian Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi has stated that the government is ready to cooperate with any leadership chosen by the Syrian people. He confirmed his readiness to facilitate a smooth transition of authority while urging the preservation of state institutions. Ghazi reiterated that Syria belongs to all its citizens and pledged to transfer all government files to the new leadership selected by the people. The Washington Post has reported that the Assad regime in Syria has collapsed, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham seized Damascus, ending over 50 years of Assad family rule. The whereabouts of Bashar al-Assad remain unclear. The Syrian Prime Minister has promised to facilitate a peaceful transition with a focus on cooperation with armed groups. The United Nations hailed this moment as the end of Syria's brutal 14-year conflict, which calls for a future based on justice and democracy. As celebrations unfold, Israel bolsters its Golan Heights existence, signaling an uncertain future for the country. Providing more analysis about the latest updates concerning the Syrian situation, joining us from Cairo, Dr. Mohammed Osman, an international relations specialist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me, Rana.
It's always our utmost pleasure, sir. How did Bashar al-Assad's regime collapse so rapidly, sir?
We can cite 3 or 4 main factors behind the fall of, or the rather dramatic fall and rapid fall of President Bashar al-Assad and his regime. The first one is war fatigue. Syria has been mired in a civil war for over 13 years, so probably the resources of the country and the capabilities of the Syrian military and security forces were drained over the past years. So it is quite expected that they would not be able to last much longer. The second factor is the economic downturn Syria has been suffering over the past few years. Syria is, since the beginning of the war, has been under massive economic sanctions and economic isolation, and the Syrian government under Bashar al-Assad was not able to deliver the basic necessities and the basic needs to its areas of control that exceeded 70% until the 26th of November 2024. And of course, the lack of political reforms is the third factor. President Assad has spectacularly failed in enacting any reforms after he managed to gain the battlefield initiative with the support of Russia and Iran. He could have put the country on a path of political reconciliation and political reform and transition. However, he elected not to. And of course, this impasse led to renewed conflict that led to the collapse of his government. And the last and fourth factor, which is the most important, is foreign meddling and foreign intervention. This attack by these armed factions was definitely bankrolled.
Which kind of foreign interaction, sir, and intervention?
Of course, foreign intervention, I believe, by a country like Turkey, by the United States, and maybe even by Israel. These countries had a vested interest in the collapse of the Assad regime, and probably they had a very prominent role in supporting the armed factions and the armed militias that led to the toppling of President Assad this morning.
Sir, how significant is the Syrian Prime Minister's promise to facilitate a smooth transition?
Well, that's a good sign on the side of the Prime Minister, and he promised to facilitate a smooth transition. However, The prime minister has absolutely no power over his own self. Even at this moment, he has no control over the Syrian government because the Syrian government does not exist anymore, and probably the Syrian state itself does not exist anymore. So he did this in an effort to adopt a conciliatory uh, rhetoric or narrative in order to try to avoid any cycle of vindictive actions or active vengeance by the armed factions and opposition or rebels, whatever you call them, that marched into Damascus this morning. However, whether his intentions will be fulfilled by actual action on the ground remains to be seen.
Sir, you see his narrative as rational from your own perspective?
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's rational, it's responsible, it's patriotic. He does not want to see, he wants the bloodshed and the violence in his country to see an end. However, he might have kind wishes and he might be acting in the right manner. However, that does not guarantee that his goals or the desired results from his gestures will be delivered.
Perfect, sir. How will regime change in Syria impact the regional balance of power, sir?
Of course, it will impact the regional balance of power in a multitude of ways, but the most important event or regional actor that has been affected by this is Iran. Iran's role in Syria has now become non-existent. Iran was one of the most influential countries in Syria, if not the most influential country. It competed for the same amount of influence with the Russians. Now they basically do not exist anymore as a relevant actor inside Syria.
Again, sir, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to catch up with you. You're saying that Iran no more exists in Syria?
Yes, they barely exist.
This weakens Iran, sir?
Iran.
Yes?
Iran does not exercise any more influence in Syria anymore. They have become an irrelevant actor in the Syrian calculus. And this is just the fact of life because they invested everything in the Syrian regime of President Bashar al-Assad. And with the fall of the Syrian regime and its institutions and the withdrawal of the pro-Iranian militias from Syria, they do not have anyone or any actor on the ground that does their bidding anymore. So this, of course, will alter the balance of power in favor of Israel and the United States and against Iran, definitely, because now Iran is in dire straits. Their main proxy in Lebanon has been devastated by war, that is Hezbollah, and now their main ally in Syria has fallen out of power. So now Iran has no presence on the borders of the state of Israel, which means that they cannot threaten them anymore or try to leverage them anymore in the future, in any potential future Middle East settlement that now seems to be more distant than ever with the very sad developments in Syria.
True, sir. Sir, considering Israel's latest provocations in Syria, how do you think this will play out in terms of preserving Syria's territorial integrity?
What happened in the Golan Heights today is what I feared and what I even warned of previously on Qnews a couple of days ago, and is that Israel has the most to gain from the fall of President Assad and the fall of the Syrian government and the Syrian state, and that they will take advantage of that to the most. And in fact, they did. Israel's provocations have went way and beyond. Today, they have invaded part of Syria's territory, creating a 5-kilometer deep buffer zone inside Syria. Benjamin Netanyahu brazenly declared that the 1974 ceasefire agreement or de-escalation agreement between Syria and Israel is dead, and it means that not only will he be content with the occupation of the Golan Heights, which they have occupied for the past 50 plus years. Now they even moved and they occupied the city of Qneys and a number of other cities that used to be in the UN buffer zone. And they might even expand further. The Israeli chief of staff said that now Israel is at war on 4 fronts, and the 4th front is Syria, which means that Israel will carry out more acts of aggression against Syria. And they did today. They destroyed al-Mazza airport or Al-Mazza military airport or air base in Damascus today, and they destroyed a multitude of military targets today and military storage facilities inside Syria, which is an indication of what is to come and how Israel will interact with Syria and how they will pursue their expansionist ambitions on the expense of Syrian territorial integrity and sovereignty. And of course, they might take advantage of the severing of the land bridge between Iran and Hezbollah and Lebanon in order to resume their war of aggression on Lebanon against Hezbollah and against the Lebanese state itself, potentially.
Okay, Dr. Osman, with the rise of the HTS to an apparent position of prominence in Syria, how will this shape the country's political landscape and what will happen in north of Syria at this point as we discuss the situation in Syria?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, an international terrorist organization, and I have to remind our viewers that it is.
Again, sir, what did you say?
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, I have to remind our dear viewers that it is an international terrorist organization.
International terrorist organization.
Yes, that's what it is, according to the United Nations. These are not my words or the words of the Russian
government. The words
government.
of the United Nations, sir.
These are the words of the United Nations. They are on the UN list of terrorist organizations. So them being a terrorist organizations, however, now they are being whitewashed and reintroduced to Syria as potential legitimate political actors. Unfortunately, the American mainstream media, which is aligned with the current US administration, is doing this bidding, as evident with the recent interview with by a US mainstream media outlet with Ahmad al-Shara, also known as his nom de guerre, which everyone knew him by for the past 10 years or more, Abu Muhammad al-Julani. And now they are being reintroduced, and they are the dominant force, of course, in Syria, and they seem to be leading the multitude of rebel factions. However, will HTS manage to consolidate power and actually impose complete control and exercise complete political control of Syria? This remains to be seen, and I do not believe they have the capacity to do that as of yet.
Okay, sir, how do you witness what's going to take place in Syria in the coming days or in the coming months or in the future?
If I am to be optimistic, and I'm not, however, if I try to pretend to be optimistic, maybe a political settlement will be reached and an agreement between the various rebel groups to indulge in.
Sir, all these rebel groups together are gonna make a political solution?
I'm saying when I'm being unrealistically optimistic, I would say so. Of course, this probably will not happen, but just to complete my thought, if they decide to engage in a political process within the auspices of UN Resolution 2254, maybe then, and the creation of a new constitution and a modern democratic state open to diversity, maybe then we might find a solution. And this is completely unlikely. What is actually likely is that Syria will descend into another cycle of civil war and internal strife, which will result in more bloodshed. Syria has lost over 600,000 people over the past 16 years, and it pains me to say that more people, more lives will be lost.
What's happening pains us all, sir. How do you foresee the role of key Arab states in pushing for a peaceful settlement in Syria as soon as possible?
I think key Arab states like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and others are being the most responsible players at the moment with regards to Syria. Yesterday, 5 Arab states held a meeting in Doha on the margins of the Doha forum. And those 5 states are Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iraq, and Jordan. And they held a ministerial summit, a foreign ministerial summit with the Asatana framework countries, Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And these 8 countries.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
Sir. Go ahead. Go ahead.
8 countries have agreed to pursue a peaceful settlement in Syria and an orderly political transition. And this is the path they are willing to support. If these Arab countries, along with Russia, Turkey, and Iran, can actually come together to form a vision to move forward, I think Syria had a chance to avoid descending into another civil war. But of course, we had.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Osman, how do you assess the situation at this point in Syria in light of course, everything that's taking place and the role of the United States and Russia? Where do they stand from all that's happening and taking place?
Of course, the United States, I believe, even though they never expressed that openly, I believe they have been fully behind what has happened in Syria, and they have provided support through Turkey and maybe even directly direct support to many of these armed factions and rebel groups and even terrorist organizations that are fighting, that fought the Syrian government for the past few years. And I think they have a lot to gain by the fall of the Assad regime as it curtails Russian influence inside Syria and the Middle East. And it also, as I said before, it completely eliminates Iran from the Syrian equation. On the other hand, Russia, of course, what happened in Syria is a substantial blow to Russian influence in Syria. However, Russia still maintains a large presence in Syria. It does maintain several military bases, including the massive naval base in Tartus and the Hamaymim air base. And these areas have been untouched by the insurgents or the militants. These areas were not attacked. These bases were not attacked. And it seems that the Russians have reached some sort of understanding with these armed factions in order to maintain their presence. And on the other hand, I think the armed factions are not interested in provoking a war with the Russians because this would cost them dearly. And they tried that before from 2016, 2015 to 2019, and they were on the losing end of the war at the end of the day. So I think they will be reaching an understanding. And I think maybe even the Russians and the Americans have reached an understanding regarding Syria.
Hopefully, sir. Dr. Mohammed Osman, thank you so much for your constructive, informative knowledge, and I can't thank you enough. An international relations specialist from Cairo. Thanks for your insights again. And we move on with the Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who has issued a statement reaffirming Egypt's close monitoring of developments in Syria and reiterating its support for Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The statement urged all Syrian factions to prioritize national interests, unity their goals, and initiate a comprehensive political process to achieve peace and restore Syria's regional standing. The ministry also emphasized Egypt's ongoing efforts in collaboration with regional and international partners to alleviate Syria's suffering, support reconstruction, and ensure the safe return of refugees, with the ultimate goal of securing the stability that the Syrian people deserve. Ahram Online has reported that the HTS has toppled Bashar al-Assad's regime. The United Nations hailed this as a watershed moment, with nations worldwide calling for stability and unity in Syria. China emphasized the need for a return to stability, while France urged Syrians to reject extremism and embrace a peaceful political transition. Germany and the United Kingdom called for the protection of minorities and a political solution, ensuring that Syria does not fall into radical hands. Iran expressed support for Syria's sovereignty and called for a political dialogue among Syrians. International powers like Turkey, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States also acknowledged all the turmoil, urging cooperation and caution to avoid chaos. The United Nations voiced cautious hope for a new chapter of peace and inclusion in Syria, marking a critical turning point in the nation's future. Providing more analysis about the recent updates in Syria, joining us from California, Dr. Ashraf Singer, an international policy expert. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Sir, how did Hayat Tahrir al-Sham's rise change Syria's political landscape that quickly?
It seems to me like these guys, they got like a support from one of the regional power, probably Turkey, we would like to give, like the HTC a chance, before to judge هيئة تحرير الشام, but before to give like that is clear judgment on their status, or we'll see in future if the HTC can really handle the situation in Syria, non-violent.
You mean the HTS, sir, huh?
Yes, yes. So this is can really هيئة تحرير الشام can really accept, the other partners or the other
You mean
groups,
the other factions?
the other fractions, yeah, to take them, in that transition smoothly and peacefully. So this is like a testing of the water, We'll see. But in general, this, هيئة تحرير الشام basically is backing, some stories or stereotypes, saying, that America or Turkey, they were really supporting, this group. But it seems to me like they are very quick and very, very professional in terms of executing, like the bureaucracy, the body of the state, like replacing, the old regime with the new regime. If they have that capacity to handle this situation in Syria now.
Sir, what is the future of Syrian governors amid divided factions?
This is a very crucial. We don't know. We cannot really predict till like a couple of
Sir,
weeks
if you
from
decide
now.
to predict or think of it, what do you read?
I'm not optimistic, in terms of the civil war. It seems to me is coming. I'm sorry, yeah.
So you
For
read a
Syria.
civil war coming in Syria.
Yeah, because Kurds, like they have already some ambitious, to control their region. I don't think Turkey gonna to accept that. So basically, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, if it's getting that support from Turkey, so this guy is gonna to fight each other. So this is one bloody sheet scenario I'm seeing for future of Syria. But Syria does need, or the people of Syria, they do need to think carefully about that transition. This is very crucial for their future. But I'm not optimistic.
You're not optimistic. Okay, sir, what does the evacuation of Iranian and Iraqi diplomats indicate about the changing regional dynamics?
This is very good question.
Thank you, sir.
And I would like to add also Russia. So what's the draw of that decision that Russia, kicked or being left, the Syria quick, Iran as well. So this is really, I would say this is really very surprising to see that situation where the regime or the Assad
Do you want to
regime
add
falls
Russia? Because
quickly.
Russia was one of Syria's main allies, sir?
Yes, because the reason that is Assad after 2011, stayed in power because of Russia. I did that analysis, in 2011, and I was correct about that, statistically, based on the numbers, So Russia was the main player to keep Assad regime in power. So
what was your
so that,
analysis, sir, that you made in 2007 about Iraq, Iran, and Russia?
yeah, that guy, they were collectively supporting, Assad regime in terms of that kind of strong relationship between Russia and Iran. So and they were backing, Assad regime, but what happened in Syria, it's really amazed in terms of that kind of the speed of the collapse of the Assad regime. This can really open many questions.
Okay,
Why?
Mr. Singer, because I have to wrap up this episode in 10 seconds, please. How will Egypt's call for unity shape Syria's transition process, sir, as soon as possible?
This is the role of Egypt. This is the role of the historical role of Egypt to support their Arab, and their neighboring, countries. And Syria, one of the major country for Arab national security, and for Egyptian national security. I think Egypt is gonna to give full support, is watching the transitions, and I hope that transition can really end peacefully, not violently.
Egypt already, sir, revealed and expressed full support and solidarity towards the Syrian people and Syria, of course. That was Dr. Ashraf Singer, an international policy expert from California. Thank you very much for your informative knowledge and your insights, sir. Dear viewers, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates in Q News and minute-by-minute coverage, of course, on the situation taking place in Syria. Thank you for watching.